So, okay, every morning, our team gets together for what we call daily huddles, and we spend about 15 minutes together talking about things that are relevant to our business, vision, etc. But this morning, I chose to start off the daily huddle asking a few would you rather questions. So I thought for our listeners, they might be entertained by it as well. So bear with me. Okay, so our first would you rather is would you rather have endless supply of chips and salsa or unlimited ice cream? What camp are you in, Jeremiah?
I'm going to go with chips and salsa because I feel like I can keep eating those and never stop, and that's okay. Ice cream, after you get a certain amount, you just can't eat anymore. It's too much. So I'm going to go chips and salsa. How about you?
Yeah, you probably could answer this for me. Oh, maybe that's the would you rather we should do is answer for the other
Switch 'em.
person, see if we got it right. Yeah, I mean, I'm slightly dairy sensitive, I guess is what I would say. So unlimited ice cream does not make my stomach feel good. So I'm going to say endless chips and salsa. Okay, here's another one though. I really like this one. I'm just going to read it. Would you rather have super speed? You could accomplish anything super fast. I feel like there's like a superhero that I have in my mind right now. Super speed or never need sleep? I can stay up all night. I don't ever need to sleep. So would you rather have super speed or never need sleep? I think we were different on this one.
Well, it's hard because I'm pretty confident you'll pick never need sleep. But then how does that work out if I'm sleeping and you're not? And then, I don't, so I think we have to pick the
I
same one.
just sit and stare at you.
Yeah, no, like I wake up the next morning and be like, look, we did all these things. I changed this, I changed that. And yeah, so I think never needing sleep. So I can imagine how many more hours you'd have if neither of us needed sleep. Yeah, so I think we have to unite on that one.
Okay, yeah, it's probably better. Recommended for married couples to try to unite on that one. But it is just an interesting mental exercise. I do recall there was this girl when I was in my undergraduate, and I recall that she required, at least that's the way she explained it to me. She required like 2 to 3 hours of sleep, and that was it. And I kind of believed her. But now thinking back, I'm wondering like, was there something wrong, or were you taking some sort of
Yeah, booster. Interesting.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly. I'm like, that's why you get such good grades here. Anyways, it kind of felt like her competitive advantage, and I was like a little bit,
wanting
jealous.
wanting to
So
not
that's why
sleep.
I know what my response is. I would never need
Okay.
sleep. Plus, I do like the early morning hours when all is quiet. Like that is my favorite time of day. So if I think about being awake all night, I'm like, ooh, more of those kind of like,
Quiet hours. I get that.
yes,
All right.
yes.
Well,
All
let's
right, that's
jump
not
in.
actually what we're going to talk about today. What are
No,
we going
yeah,
to talk
it's
about
it's it's
today?
fun. So we're talking today about a situation where someone has more money than they've had before. They sold a business, they retired, they had a best year, they got that great bonus, and they are more nervous than they've ever been. They thought the money would solve it. They thought the money would make them feel better, but they just walked into a whole new set of worries that they didn't realize they're
Mm,
going to have.
mm.
And what do they do now?
Nervous, stressed, fearful, anxious. These are all emotions that some of which we've experienced ourselves, and oftentimes we've seen or observed in some of our clients. And the irony feels like this is a moment when I should be celebrating, or this is a finish line that I've been working towards or anticipating. And maybe everybody else in your life, or everybody that you work with, or the people around you, your family members, are celebrating, and you are actually not feeling that same way. And I think this can manifest in a lot of different ways. It could be, the individual that even after they sell their business, now they become anxious about kind of their next startup or their next endeavor. It could be someone who works for a family business, but they're the second or the third generation, just wanting to kind of fill the shoes of those before them and do just as good or better. There's someone who says, great, I've achieved this success. I don't want to work this hard forever, but I don't know who else could do what I do, right? How could I ever actually take more time off? Not even step away from the company, but like, how could I actually start to enjoy some freedom of time? Not just freedom of money, but like freedom of time. Maybe it is that person that's wanting a succession plan. What happens next? Maybe they've spent their whole career and they're in their 40s and 50s and they wanted to retire early, but they feel handcuffed by the work that they do. And what's the next phase of my business? It could be kind of on somebody the next phase of their business, trying to think through cash flow, acquisition, capital requirements. So, they have a proven concept, they've experienced some growth, and now it's like, how do I accelerate? The list goes on. But
Hmm.
just to try to identify with some of our listeners, I think the first step is just really identifying what you are experiencing. So, the irony being, it might seem to be a moment when you quote unquote should be celebrating, and really what you're feeling is stressed or nervous or anxious about the next season.
And it's also walking from a place where you felt very comfortable and capable, whether you were
Mm,
working and you just retired or you're a business owner and you just sold your business. It's common when people sell their businesses that they then become a senior vice president in the larger business. There's some sort of
mhm,
merger where they were acquired. Well, now they've got a boss that they haven't had in years. They've got KPIs they have to meet. They now have a bigger team because they're put in a leadership position, and they were good at running their own business. They were good at being in charge, and now maybe they are feeling like mid-level management. And even though they had this big exit financially, they feel different. Their stress levels go up, not down. It's new. We see this a lot with people, especially as they're exiting a business or they're retiring. They say, "Well, I've had a pretty good paycheck. What happens when that paycheck goes to zero?" That just
mhm,
doesn't feel like that is able to work, even though they have a nice pile of money or they have some exit they just were able to walk through. It's really hard. So I think that's the emotional state there is really important to first just acknowledge, hey, I'm stressed. This is difficult. I don't feel capable the way I used to. I feel out of my depth or I feel uncertain. That's the first piece. And then the second is to say, well, what do we do now? And I think
mhm,
for our process, I think for a lot of places, we kind of actually want to name the fears. Like, what are we scared of? What are we afraid of? Like acknowledging this is where we're at emotionally. And then let's name what are we feared of looking silly. We made a good exit and we didn't do well with our money. Are we afraid of the market actually, stock market actually taking a big dip and we really do lose a big significant amount of money? I think it's important to kind of work through some of those fears and help identify them so we can deal with them, address them as you
mhm,
go from there.
mhm.
What are some of the other things that you see, Laura?
Yeah, just the complication, life gets a little bit more complex, and oftentimes the person driving this success is the one bearing the weight of the complexity, and they're looking around saying like, "Hey, I know I need some support. I know I need a thought partner in this process. I'm not sure who to call." I have professional advisors within different arenas in my life, but they're not all coordinated. We're not all having the same conversation. And so you get siloed advice from different professionals, but there's really nobody who comes and sees the full picture and can help advise you. And frankly, that can be quite a lonely position. And even though you've had success up until now, you might feel more kind of tenuous regarding success going forward because the types of considerations, decisions that you need to make are more complex than they have been before. And so we don't want to leave our listeners here. We want to kind of identify you or someone might be kind of feeling some of these emotions. Maybe we're just putting names to them. And we want to get back to that celebration piece.
Mm.
Look at the success that you've had. There's something that drove you, motivated you to find that level of success. And it's not gone. It might be a little bit hidden in this new sea of unknowns. And so this is a great moment to consider who best to have on your team, who can come alongside you to build a plan that envelops all these different areas of complexity to create one plan roadmap, considers even some twists and turns upcoming. But number one, you're not alone. And number two, I think the most important is that frees up your time to do and continue to do what's your highest and best. What thrills you? What excites you? What brings you energy during your day? Right? That's going to be the number one place that you want to place your focus on. And it might be time to look at hiring a who for that process.
I love that. In that comment of discovering, we talk a lot about people, you can decide some things and other things you have to discover. In this moment of having enough money on paper, right? You have the success. When does it actually feel like enough? What do you enjoy spending your time doing? You've said you want to spend more time, whatever it may be, but do you actually want to do that? And you have to discover some of those things to start putting your feet to the pavement to really try some of that. I think a big piece of this is that for most people, earning money, providing for their families, providing for themselves, providing for their future, reaching success has been a bigger piece of the goal than they realize. And when they finally hit that goal, they check off the list. They look into their next goal and they realize, oh, it's a much smaller goal that I had, to stay physically healthy or spend more time with my family. Like even though they would have said that was the whole point, they realize that that goal of being successful and driving forward has taken up so much space when they don't have that same need when they've made the financial success. Now they got to look a little bit and say, well, are these other goals that need to expand? They can take up more space. Are there other things that I really want to be a part of? But what floods in, I think, is all these worries and fears that force them to try and hold on to that initial goal. I'm not there yet. This isn't enough. I thought it was enough, but it's not enough. I need to keep working. I need it. And they're kind of in this middle ground of having success, but still feeling like it's not enough. And yeah, it's an important place to get out of.
Yeah, time for new vision. And so we talk about moving from that moment of celebration. Don't let the fears rob you of an opportunity
Mm,
to develop new vision. And this doesn't, I know we talk primarily about some business owners, but let's talk about retirees, people in anticipation of stepping out of the workforce. People are living 30 years into retirement. Like, what is your best use of that time? What not only do you feel called to do, what do you feel compelled to do? Again, what gives you energy? And so, this moment, in terms of a mindset shift, can turn from being fearful and anxious to let's retool and revision, right? Like what it is for the future. And if you've spent a lot of time trying to grow your business or develop your career and you've gotten to this point and now you are looking around and saying, I want to invest more time in my health or my family or my community or charities that I'm involved in, etc. Well, okay, let's dial back the next layer of detail. What does that actually look like? What type of
mm,
role do you want to have? And that inevitably also relates to your personal financial plan, right? Is it a charitable activity? Is it your estate plan? Is it, I want to move into a semi retirement? Is there still income that you're seeking to earn, right? Like it all becomes related. But I would encourage our listeners to recognize those transition points in life as opportunities to revision. So the first step is kind of acknowledging some of the emotions that you feel, even if you quote unquote feel like you should be feeling something else. There should be a season to celebrate. I'm feeling really anxious. Let's acknowledge that first. And then take this gap or this moment as an opportunity to revision. It just means you've outgrown your previous vision. You're ready for something new.
yep. And that next new, I think, as you vision, it's all about the confidence. Like we're moving to have a client, a person, an individual in that moment where you can move forward with that confidence. And that confidence comes from vision, preparedness, resources, all those good things. I start the conversation with someone who's feeling fear, anxiety, it's never enough. Transition to I have a clear plan. I know what I'm about. I know what I'm capable of. I'm confident to move forward. Man, that's a huge emotional transformation. But what that takes is you just said, Laura, is the vision, is the planning, but it's not the, pie in the sky. Oh, I hope I do this. Here's my nice vision. But like, I'm talking about real visceral confidence. Like I know where I'm headed. I know what my next season looks like. And I think imagine those of our listeners, they probably had families and friends that have walked through that, right? They've gone through a point where they felt uncertain or they felt, I'm not sure where to be. And then you see the shift, you say the click, hey, they have a new vision. They have a new purpose. They are off to the races and moving forward with confidence. And we talk about moving at
Yeah.
the speed of confidence,
Yeah.
which I think is a fun catchphrase. But the idea being when you know what you're about and you know where you're headed, you can move there so much faster and so much more capable. But it's an inflection point when people get the exit, they get the retirement. I think it's really important for people to retool a little bit and say, what is my next vision? And how do I
Yeah.
live into that with confidence?
And I would say as you kind of revision and you move through that season, then okay, after you have developed what feels like a new vision for this next season of life, well, not just feels like, is a new vision for this next season of life, depending on how you define what that next season is, right? You want to then start to identify what are the pinch points? What are the areas of ambiguity? What are the pains or concerns, right? So for people stepping into retirement, it might be like, how do I draw income? Where do I draw it from? What are my tax implications? Will this last my whole life? I want to travel more. Is now the time to do it? I want to do that major home renovation. I want to accelerate that philanthropic plan. Like, how and when are the right time to do those things? That's an example. It might be a serial entrepreneur that's ready to kind of do a new startup and they're
Mm,
wondering when do I have enough capital? How much of my resources can I exhaust to kind of go all in on this new concept, and how do I do that with totally hamstringing my personal finances, right? So as you revision for that next season, get really clear on where we call them gaps or areas of concern or uncertainty or ambiguity are there, because that's going to help guide you towards what resources, what people you need in your life to help fill those gaps for you.
Yeah. And I think that it can be a fun place to be in, right? Most people, I think, approach this with fear and anxiety, and that's where they start. But it can be a really fun place to say, what do I want to be about this next season? And to revision and to really reach into the places where people didn't realize that they had a gap. They didn't realize they weren't there. So we talk about the vision, we talk about the confidence, and then I think becomes, in my mind, the habits. This podcast called Building Wealthy Habits to say, what are the new habits? What are the new rhythms that make sense? Going and working the way they used to is probably not going to serve them well in this next season. Checking their accounts every 15 minutes is not going to serve them in this next season. So how do they understand what enough looks like? How do they manage it with advisors, with a team in a way that is exceedingly healthy and is building on what they've already built? So I think that becomes the fun of a new normal, right? Of a new adventure. A lot of our clients who are business owners and they're entrepreneurs, they're always entrepreneurs. We have a running joke of, we have a client who, not a real client, but a situation from a client who would retire, be excited, go sit on the beach. And while they're sitting on the beach, they start talking to the lifeguard. As they talk to the lifeguard, they realize there's this gap in the industry. So by the end of the beach trip, they've hired the lifeguard to start a new business to save the gap in the industry. It's just who they are, right? They're just
Yep.
entrepreneur by nature. And I think
Yep.
giving the freedom to continue to thrive in those ways, if that's who they are. Others that finally have the moment to sit and do something different. I'm going to
Right.
shift gears. I'm going to be the husband, be the father, be the friend that
Hmm.
I've wanted to be and felt like I couldn't. It's just to
Yeah.
step into all those.
We talked on a previous episode where we interviewed a good friend of ours, J.R. Lay, and we talked about getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. And so, Jeremiah, you're talking about developing new habits. Sometimes we call those like new commitments. So, what served you in this past season may not serve you in the next season. We're also assuming, right, some of our listeners are not planning to move into sort of just coast mode, that they have other ambitions, other vision for this next season of life. And I would challenge our listeners to pursue that, to get interested, to get enamored with kind of what's next, right? We all wake up wanting a purpose in our day. And so the irony is, you're like, here I am listening to a podcast by a financial advisor. Why are we talking about mindset and emotions and vision and kind of all these sort of emotional elements? Because they all actually guide the best financial plan. Our clients that have a clearer vision for their next season of life ultimately equip us more effectively to build an infrastructure that supports that, right? We are there to support those commitments along the way that ensure the outcome that they're after. And don't we all need people in our life to hold us accountable to our vision? Because we're going to drift, right? If it
Mhm.
is a purpose that drives us to achieve or accomplish or do something we never have before, we're going to have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. We're going to have to push ourselves in certain areas, and we all will succumb to moments of exhaustion or difficulty, and we're going to drift. We're going to drift from our vision. And so, really, a big part of what we do is holding our clients accountable to the vision that they've set out, either as an individual, a business owner, a married couple, right? They have set a vision, and it's like, okay, let's continue to support that until it changes or until a life event alters it, until, okay, we're ready to retool and revision for the next phase. So we're talking a lot about kind of the soft skills of what we do, but they are so essential. And quite frankly, they are incorporated in nearly every meeting agenda that we have. And every
Yeah.
time that we sit down with our clients, the first thing that we talk about is kind of a personal check in: what's going on in life. Typically, we're following up from a conversation that we had at the last meeting. How has that progressed or how has that changed, right? And then we find kind of the practical implications of, okay, how does that actually affect these other strategies that we have in place: tax, cash flow, retirement, estate planning, right, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Right. I mean, success on paper only counts, right? If there's also success in your emotions, success in your family, success with your spouse or your partner, right? That's where people objectively they would say that, or
mhm,
subjectively. But when you really get down to it, like they all need to be to really find success and a definition of enough, right? You really have to have all these different levels of success.
mhm.
And it starts with the success on paper, right, with your business and your finances. But in order to really percolate through the rest of your life, right, it's a different type of success. It's a different type of vision moving forward. So we're excited to have those conversations. We're excited to sit with people as we move forward in that space.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pride and joy of what we do. I also think it's what makes us a little bit unique. In the financial services industry, you've got people that have all different sorts of specialties and focus, and you could certainly go and get investment advice from firms that will make it more of like a transaction, right? So We know we're not the right fit for everyone, but for those who are looking for a strategic partner to build the financial infrastructure to support their vision going forward, that is the work that we love to do, to dive in and to work with our clients for multiple years to make sure that the vision they've laid out actually becomes a reality. That's a joy of what we get to do every day. All right, to all of our listeners, thanks for listening today. A few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review, even if it's not 5 stars. We welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.